Welcome to Cycling Fashion Week, the only global podcast purely focused on cycling style, elegance, lifestyle, and culture. I'm your host, Alex. I am back, joined by my regular co-hosts, Warren and Tony. And this fall, our sponsor, Le Club, brings you its largest ever cold weather collection. Winter apparel and accessories to delight and deliver from brands like MAP, Universal Colors, and Fingers Crossed. Or shop super light indoor trainer essentials for the time spent Zwifting. Enjoy 15% off unique bundles and free shipping on any order over $100, or use the code FashionWeek15 and get 15% off your order of all the best, the biggest selection of winter apparel over at leclub.cc, our partner Le Club. If you're in Montreal, drop by their coffee. You can also order the coffee on leclub.cc. Warren and Tony, I am back after a 1 week hiatus. How you guys doing?
I'm doing well, but Warren is not.
I think a few of our astute listeners have figured it out, but I broke my wrist last Friday. So that's 4 or 5 days ago now. I hate to say it, I broke my wrist while riding on a mountain bike trail. I was on my cross bike because I don't own a mountain bike. Don't worry, I haven't gone that far. But I was riding through a trail that was covered in leaves and was thinking to myself, it's pretty hard to see all the terrain here. Maybe I should get off my bike in this spot. And then I crashed into a log, which sent me into a rock. So my cross race season is over. Maybe my outdoor riding season is over. I don't know 100% yet, but most likely. I guess I'll just have to go to Le Club and buy some of that super light clothing to wear on the trainer when I'm using Wahoo's system.
I guess that's a good thing, is that your cross racing season is over, because I have to say that
it wasn't going great.
No, but the cross scene in Toronto, and I don't know what it's like elsewhere, gives me A level. Well, I play hockey, so I'm going to reference hockey, but I'm sure it happens in all sports. A level men's beer league hockey, where it's like the least important thing and should just be like a fun time, on your weekends or your evening or whatever. And these people take it so seriously.
Hold on, because last episode you were ripping cyclocross for being too positive and good vibes, and now you're saying people take it too seriously and it's not fun. I feel like these are contradicting views.
No, that's not what I mean. I mean the focus and the training that goes into it. People are willing to like freeze their ass off in 4-degree weather, raining, to get a 20-minute ride in. People will miss their son's bris because they've got a cross race. They got to drive 4 hours for a cross race.
I feel like the bris lasts about the same time as a cyclocross race.
It's not the like activity while they're at it. It's just like the commitment to it or something. I don't know.
I want to pose a question to you, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
How many cross races have you been to?
Like to watch a race? Maybe one.
I knew that was the answer, and I just wanted to get that in front of our listeners just for context, because I don't disagree. There are some people in the Toronto scene, and I would argue probably in any cyclocross scene, I don't know that, but it's just an educated guess, who, yes, own 3 sets of tubular wheels, all of the tubular tire types, so they can have, mud tires, sand tires, mixed. I don't even know the kinds, because I just basically run mud tires or mixed tires all season long, because who cares? So I think my attitude might be approved by Tony, because I just race because it is fun and my results don't matter, which is great because I upgraded this year and I'm doing horribly, or I was doing horribly until I broke my wrist. I think that's true of any amateur racing or amateur sport. Because are you telling me that in men's league hockey, there isn't like a guy who shows up in, like a Leafs Matthews jersey or something?
Well, they've got to wear their team jersey. But yeah, there's guys who look like Ovechkin. But that's my point, is like you go and you're like, calm down, people. Calm down. Like you're not going to, like, there's no scouts out here. John Ferguson Jr. is not watching you.
Part of the fun of cyclocross, for me at least, is going to watch either in my own race or their races and watching those people that spend all that money and are in that invested in the sport. And they're doing it to, come in like 15th. I just find that very funny. And, just to add to that, I got called out because, as I mentioned last episode, I bought a new carbon bike. When I showed up to my first race for that, the very first comment said to me wasn't like, oh, nice bike, blah, blah, blah. It was like, oh, just going full masters, eh? Because I bought an expensive carbon frame.
Which is
race.
a master's thing. All right. So I pose a question to you, Warren. Most of, our social circle are cyclists. We do, it's kind of our life. So if you had planned if you have a wedding coming up and you were to invite our social circle, which is mostly cyclists, and you happen to not know that you planned that wedding on the day of a cross race, do you think everyone would show up or some people would miss it for the cross race?
Depends. Is it nationals or what? I don't know of anyone skipping like an important family event for a cross race. I myself missed a race this year to do Thanksgiving. So
if they served craft beer and slow drip coffee at the wedding, do you think people would maybe not go to the cross race at that point?
They would ride there.
They ride there after the race, or maybe the race happens between the ceremony and the reception. So maybe you can do it all. And I could definitely see somebody trying to fit it all in, So, and to which I would agree, that's taken too seriously. It's just an amateur cross race.
All right. Well, Warren's cross season is done. His outdoors riding season probably done. Crashed on a trail, which, had us believe that this is it's a sabotage on the part of Big Mountain Bike to retaliate, given the full kind of offensive that we've been mounting on Big Mountain Bike. So Big Mountain Bike carrying out a special military operation to retaliate.
Gary Fisher definitely planted that rock and that log very strategically. He knew the physics of how you would hit the log and how you would fall.
If I was riding a full suspension mountain bike, I probably wouldn't have fallen. I just would have ridden right over the rock.
Exactly.
Big Mountain Bike waging informational warfare to get us to change our takes and influence bike buyers into buying Big Mountain Bike. We're not going to do it though, because we're a principled podcast. We stand for what we believe in. And so anyway, Warren, get better soon. Hopefully this wrist of yours heals pretty quick. Shout out to Skylar Goudwaard. I believe that's how her last name is pronounced. Skylar, beautiful Dutch name, did great on the podcast with you guys a couple of weeks ago. Things got a little crazy for me at work, was not able to participate in the podcast, but Skylar did great on the podcast. I thought the three of you had great chemistry. Now, the podcast maybe lacked a certain multilingual, cultured sophistication that I bring to the table, not to brag, but other than that, I thought it was a great podcast. And thank you very much, Skylar. We will for sure have Skylar back on because first of all, she had a great radio voice and she had great takes. And her podcast, her FTP is greater than the sum of our 3 FTPs. So shout out Skylar. Thank you very much. Okay, so late October as well, it's the end of the pro riding season. So the end of the UCI World Tour ended with the Giro di Lombardia. Guys, what did you think about this year's UCI World Tour? What was the highlight for you guys?
It's funny because I watched a lot of races this year, and I feel like I was just thinking as you're talking, it's like, fuck, I'm not even sure I know what my highlight would be. The low light was obviously the Vuelta. Because I don't even remember that it happened. But this be pretty obvious answer. The Tour was pretty good watching this year. I kind of expected Pogacar, I don't know how to say it, to run away with it. And then obviously that's not what happened. But then, so yeah, that would definitely be up there. But really the highlight for me has to be the Grand Prix Cycliste du Montreal, because we got to ride in a car in the middle of the peloton, see it live, go to the VIP tent, which, side note, apparently is actually going to the VIP tent is a faux pas if you're a quote unquote journalist, but we're not really journalists, so who cares?
Wait, where did you hear that?
From an actual journalist, a friend of the podcast who is a photographer for many newspapers. Nick, he told us that it's kind of like an unwritten rule that journalists wouldn't go to the VIP tent.
Listen, we're modern journalists in the podcast form, so it's a whole different world, right? We need to be immersed in the culture.
Narrowcasting, new media.
We also need to be more immersed in the culture. We're not focused as much on the race, we're focused on the culture, and part of that's the VIP experience.
And that was the highlight, and that was the highlight of the pro race season for me. And I don't even remember who won.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Warren. I thought it was a good Tour de France this year. It was fun to watch. There was lots of ups and downs, and it wasn't kind of written from stage two, which it sometimes is. Here's what I'm not going to go into my highlights of the season. I just have a take about what happens now at the end of the UCI World Tour, and it's just kind of coming to terms with the relegation system that the UCI has at this point. And it seems like two teams are getting relegated. So they're going to get kicked out of the UCI World Tour, and a few more teams are getting promoted into the UCI World Tour. And the two teams that are getting kicked out are Israel Premier Tech and Lotto, the Belgian team. And so I have long believed that cycling is financially inept as a sport, that the business model of cycling seems absolutely broken, that the sport sort of has no independent revenue sources overall. I mean, you look at pro sports in North America, like football, baseball, hockey, basketball, there's significant revenue attached to it. There's TV revenues, there's ticket revenues, there's merch sales. And cycling maybe has some TV revenues, but it doesn't really have ticket revenues, doesn't really have merch sales. It's not a very lucrative sport from a financial perspective. And the only way to get money into the sport is to rely on people who are passionate, who want to sponsor a team, like our good friend Sylvan Adams. And full disclosure, we are not a neutral party to this debate here. Sylvan Adams has been very good to us. Chatted with him at the Grand Prix Cycliste de Montréal. So, he's a friend of the podcast. So I just find it very odd that the UCI would choose to kick out of the UCI World Tour someone who wants to invest in cycling and make the sport better and, throw money at the sport. It just seems like in the name of this kind of promotion relegation, they're basically pushing away a guy who has very significant financial means, who wants to be investing in the sport, making it a better sport, and potentially developing the sport as a business overall. And these guys are saying, nah, go away. You didn't get enough UCI points, which I just think is the UCI kind of shooting itself in the foot. So my take is the following. I think Americans need to be running cycling. If you let Americans run the Grand Tours, the Classics, the UCI, they find a way to make money. And I just think that it just seems like cycling is a financially inept sport that is condemned to go from crisis to crisis, with the likes of Astana not paying their riders on time and just not really thriving financially as a sport. So maybe that's my take. I'm sure I'll get hate for it, saying, oh, the North Americans think they want to run everything. Yeah, pretty much.
I don't know. I'm not as business savvy as you. I mean, I do agree. Probably the Americans they always find a way to make something, and it's probably a better thing. But in terms of the relegation, we're talking about with having wealthy, passionate people to sort of bring money in, because I read some articles on this, and then I read the comments. I like to see what the people are up to, what the people thoughts are. A lot of people were defending the relegation and kind of comparing it to what happens in, I suppose, most European sports. Obviously, North America, they don't do relegation, but soccer, I know, is a very popular one that'll relegate these teams. But that works because the desire in European football for these fans to sort of be part of it is so massive. So like a third tier team sells out, and if a second tier team gets bumped up to the Premier League, they're going to be fine because they already have this massive fan base and financial backing and all this kind of stuff. The problem is exactly sort of as you explained it. It's not like there's this waiting in the wing, these huge continental teams that just have all this money and they just need to get a shot to be big. They have nothing. And part of the reason they're continental, they don't have the riders for it. And I mean, I guess you could argue that if they're not getting the UCI points, then, a team like Pure Antics not getting the UCI points, maybe they don't have quite the level of riders. But I just think that financially, they're really doing a bad job. You're very correct on that.
Anyway, so that's one thought I had on the end of the UCI season. And like Lotto, I mean, is a team that's been around forever. Like I'm reluctant to say it's an iconic team, but it's a team that's been there for a long time. They've been very committed to cycling overall, and because they didn't get enough UCI points, they're gone, right? I don't know. There has to be a better way than that. Another example, Formula One, Liberty Media, American company, buy Formula One, do a Netflix show, it thrives. Wasn't doing that great before these guys came in. So I'm not saying that it necessarily has to be Americans doing that. That was more of a tongue-in-cheek comments. We're Euro snobs here on this podcast too, but it just seems like they need to think outside the box a little bit on how to make cycling more financially viable. Before we go into our regular segments, I want to remind our listeners that we have a contest going on right now. You can participate. We have a partnership with our good friends over at Albion Cycling, the fantastic brand out of the UK, where they developed a new product called the Micro Musette, and you can win a very unique, actually one of a kind collectible Cycling Fashion Week branded Micro Musette that they did in collaboration with us. And to participate, you go to our Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week, follow us, follow Albion at albion.cycling. And what you should do is you check out our grid on Instagram. There's a post about the Micro Musette contest. And basically what you do, you go to that post and you either comment on the post, DM us on Instagram, or email us at cyclingfashionweek@gmail.com. Email us what you would put in the Micro Musette, what you would carry in the Micro Musette during a ride. We're going to, I think, select the funniest answer, and we will read it on the program here, and we'll get in touch with you to get you your Micro Musette. So go check us out on Instagram at Cycling Fashion Week. Leave a comment, send us a DM, or email us what you would put in the Micro Musette. Okay, so for our first segment, we're going to do a little overview of news from the world of cycling and cycling design and fashion and new products that have come out recently. We haven't done that for a few episodes because it was late season. There wasn't much going on, but there's actually new material out there in terms of new bicycle models that have come out for next year. So we're going to talk about this. The first one that we will talk about is the iconic Italian brand Bianchi. They unveiled the new Oltre road bike, which has the air deflector aero tech. So essentially, what is that? It's an aggressively aero bike that incorporates a technology called air deflector that's designed to channel the airflow at the sides of the head tube. It has an innovative, their words, not mine, aero cockpit. It's a very expensive bike. The top end starts from about 14,000 euros. Everything was designed in-house, so that includes the wheels, the hubs, the saddles, all designed in-house by Bianchi specifically for the Oltre. And there's 3 different platforms of this bike. There's the Oltre RC, the RC, which Bianchi calls it a hyperbike. There's the Oltre Pro, so professional, and the Oltre, just basically Oltre. How am I going to describe this?
Good luck.
Warren, do you want to take a stab at it?
I'll try. I mean, I was trying to think about what to say about this like all day when it popped up on the sites. And, you know, I think it's just a matter of time before some listeners send this to us before this episode comes out, being like, you guys.
We already got someone earlier today sent it.
Yeah, because it is. Okay, so I'll try to describe it before it. There's holes all over the bike. There are holes in the head tube. Like, you know, at first glance, it kind of, the handlebars, the integrated cockpit sort of looks like a lot of modern aero road bikes where there's kind of a little hole between the stem and the top of the handlebars. But now there's like these holes that almost look like the jet engine intake on like a Harrier jet on the sides of the head tube. It's not like one hole through it. It's like funneling the air around the head tube. And that's sort of the best way I could describe it. It looks like intake valves on a fighter jet.
Remember the new Cervelo S5 too? We spent quite a bit of time talking about this, the stem of the Cervelo S5, which has a triangular shape. And I described it as a fork on a fork. Matt Stevens, our good friend Matt Stevens, came on the podcast and sort of defended it, said that for him, it was a welcome innovation for cycling, and that it was so aggressively futuristic that he liked it. So what I thought was very ugly about that new stem design that the Cervelo S5 had was, first of all, the triangle, but second of all, if you look at it, you look at it from the side. Basically, you put the bike against the wall, you look at it at a 90-degree angle. The stem looks like it's angled upwards, just because, again, it's one of those integrated stems that's very bulky, but it has an angle. It's almost 45-degree up. This Bianchi Oltre it's even worse. Like you could see it literally slope aggressively up. And I know there's still a big drop from the seat to the handlebars, but it's that angle. Like it literally angles, yeah, almost 45 degrees up from the top tube. And it's almost like, you know, an old guy wants to buy a bike, wants a comfortable position. This is not comfortable. It's an aero bike, but it looks like a comfortable bike. Why would you do that to a $14,000 bike? That is mind boggling.
This is beyond disappointing and sad because at least Cervelo has always been making ugly bikes. So the S5 is ugly, but they've been making ugly bikes pretty much since they started. It's it was started by two Canadian guys who are engineers. You can almost excuse them in a way. We can criticize it, but their modus operandi has always been to sort of do that. Bianchi it's Italian, it's classic. And so for a company like this to just massacre a very sort of iconic bike that the Ultra sort of was becoming as far as sort of newer models of Bianchi, I'm speechless at how upsetting this is. Italian Alex, guest host sometimes, he has an Ultra, and as he sent a screenshot and he just said, look what they've done to my boy, the famous Godfather quote, because it's just, he's Italian Alex, he loves his Bianchi, he loves his Celeste color, and they have just absolutely massacred this bike.
What's crazy on the Oltre RC, which is the hyper bike that they call, the paint job. So there's a lot of matte black on there, which, you know what I think about matte black. I think it needs to go away from the cycling industry. But it doesn't even say Bianchi on the bike. It says Reparto Corse, which I assume is what RC stands for. And like, I guess this is them going the way of S Works, like where you have your Specialized, which is kind of the regular line, but the called the Hyperbike is an S Works, so it's like a different name that you see on the bike. I guess that's what they're doing.
I think it might say Bianchi on the other side.
It says Bianchi on the
chain stays.
On the chain stays. Yeah, it says Bianchi on the chain stays. It says Reparto Corse on the wheels and on the frame. So I guess they're trying to pull an S Works on us as well. Tony stole my take. I'm horrified. I mean, Bianchi it's a heritage. It's an iconic brand. Deeply associated with Italian heritage and cycling. And now they're going this way of like the futuristic, almost like I don't know. It looks like an F-35, or it's just awful.
Like I can even forgive the upward angled stem, like the holes on the head tube are just like I don't believe for a second that creates any meaningful difference for an amateur, let alone a pro. And it just looks awful. Like, what are we trying to design supercars? Like, I no.
And they're clearly appealing to dentists because they say, look, compared to the previous Oltre XR4 model, the Oltre RC saves 17 watts at a speed of 50 kilometers per hour. So who what rider who's going to buy this bike, rides at 50 kilometers per hour and is going to need to save those 17 watts? I bet the average rider who buys this definitely needs to save 17 watts, but it's not going to be at a speed of 50 kilometers an hour. And so it won't make a difference at all.
Also, I feel like the UCI really needs to look at this because I don't know the like wording of the rule, right? But UCI has some rule that sort of basically states a bike has to look like a bike. And this is starting to push that way into triathlon sort of, it's not looking as much like a bike. It's still there. They still have the double triangle, which I think is part of the rule and stuff, but it's really easing a lot of stuff sort of happening. I think the UCI needs to, in all their great wisdom, because they usually make great decisions, take a look at this and ban this from the pro peloton.
UCI is too busy relegating people who want to throw money at the sport.
Also, I noticed it comes with one of those 3D printed saddles, which I know Specialized has made some, and all I hear about is like how they're so comfortable, blah blah blah. They're also super expensive. They're like $500-$600,
which is dope.
Yeah, I mean, if it works, sure, it's great. But I think these 3D printed saddles look really bad. It looks like you're sitting on like a spider web, and I don't know. I also don't buy that is more comfortable than like a higher end physique, Brooks, fabric saddle. Like I doesn't buy it. So it's not even like, even if it were comfortable, I think it looks really terrible.
And you're a carbon bike owner, so you're sort of in this milieu a little bit, right? Alex and I are sort of metal bike owners, so we don't know as much about this sort of dentist world as you do.
Maybe I have to get a 3D printed saddle for my carbon bike.
I think so. Nothing like a $900 saddle on a cross bike that you're barely sitting on it.
Done. Sold. I'll buy one.
Okay, next release we're going to talk about. So this
Is it possible to go from bad to worse?
It is, because that's what we're going to do, Tony. It came out last week on the Instagram account of our friends at Bike Rumor. So they released pictures of what they call the heavily updated Marin Gestalt. So for those listeners not familiar with that model, the Marin Gestalt is a gravel bike by the, I believe, California-based brand Marin. I just say they're California-based because I assume they refer to Marin County. I'm sure if I'm wrong, listeners will let me know. But Marin released an updated Gestalt. They call it the Gestalt X10. And in the words of the good people at Bike Rumor, they say that they go full trail adventure with down country mountain bike inspired geometry and lots of mounts. Not all the mounts, but plenty for grid bike packing adventures. So 67.5 degree head angle, really low 80 millimeter bottom bracket drop. The bike is designed to carve through single track, draw bars, 425 millimeter chainstay length so that it's comfortable for long rides, and a kind of long wheelbase to give it good stability as well. You look at this freaking thing, it is a mountain bike. It's a mountain
It's a rigid
bike.
mountain bike.
Yeah, it's basically a mountain bike. And you guys aren't so familiar with Marin. I believe we, in our Cycling Fashion Week
Marin.
WhatsApp group, we've kind of thrown around ideas before and looked at some bikes. And I don't, you guys didn't seem all that familiar with Marin, but I talk about it because there's I don't know what it is about Marin. They're very popular around Quebec in general, in Montreal. I don't know if it's because they have a big dealer network here, but like my dad, for example, has a Marin Gestalt. His bike was stolen not that long ago. He had a Da Vinci, and with the insurance money, he replaced it with a Marin Gestalt. So it's an aluminum gravel bike, and it's got a much more classic geometry than this new updated Gestalt X10, which is basically a mountain bike. Actually, I think my dad's gravel bike, my dad's in his 70s, so he's more of a recreational rider, but I think it looks a lot better than this thing. Now, I just want to say, if my dad, because he always asks me before bike purchases, and it's funny because he's the one who got me into road cycling when I was a teenager, but he always asks me before going ahead with a bike purchase, what do you think about that? Which is the thing to do because we're the global authority on that. But if he had told me, Alex, I'm going to buy the Marin Gestalt X10, I would have said, absolutely not. Do not let your family members buy this. If this is a time to intervene with your family members if they want to go this kind of rigid mountain bike route for their gravel bikes. It's really interesting today in the news because we go from, I guess we're at both ends of the spectrum. We got that kind of hyper bike that doesn't quite look like a bike on the one end, on the extreme aero roadie kind of vibe. And at the other end, we got this gravel bike, which is basically a mountain bike. Both horrible, but both very different.
I would love like a story where Alex is out somewhere and someone asks him about his family and he says, "Oh, I'm actually estranged from my father." And they say, "Oh, really? Why?" "Well, he bought a Marin Gestalt X10 bike and I just couldn't see him anymore." But this bike looks sort of how a child draws a bike. when a little child sketches out a bike, this is sort of the proportions that child would draw them in, except for the wheels are real wheels, so they're more circular. But this thing is awful. This is even ugly for like a hardtail mountain bike. Like if this had flat bars or riser bars, it would still be ugly. There's even nicer hardtail mountain bikes out there. Like the designers of this should be drawn and quartered. I can't believe in the same week we went like the Bianchi comes out and it's just like, what is this thing? And the heritage of Italian design is being, they're spitting in the face of, essentially they're spitting in Leonardo da Vinci's face, they're spitting in Botticelli's face by designing that thing. I think it can't get worse than this thing comes out and it's like some sort of a prank.
This is a rigid mountain bike with drop bars. That's what it is. They are fully repackaging products from the 90s and just telling you it's something else. And it is weird because I do know Marin a little bit. I think it's relatively popular in sort of rural Ontario. I've seen a number of those at like some gravel events that I definitely wasn't participating in.
And you took way too seriously.
Yeah. And, it just looked like a road bike with bigger tire clearance. So they've fully leaned in. And the only thing I do have to ask, if I were riding this bike, would I have broken my wrist?
I don't know, but you would look like an idiot, more so than you do from breaking your wrist going 3 kilometers an hour. All I'm gonna say, if you're looking at this bike and you're thinking like, oh man, I really want to buy this bike, well, obviously you shouldn't. And if you just think like, I really think that a kind of more slack, single track style bike, just please go get like a Specialized rock hopper from 1994 or something. You can put some sort of like updated wheels on it, some good tires. It probably has like a more weight to it, but you'll look way cooler.
Speaking of Specialized rock hopper from 1994, my commuter bike happens to be a Specialized hard rock from 1992 with some crazy 1990s paint job. And I actually have fenders on it, which were painted to match the frame. So it's purple, yellow, and sort of fluorescent pink is the colorway of my bike. And I put a Brooks saddle on it. I put a nice basket in the front and a baby seat in the back. And when we went to the crit at the Grand Prix Cycliste de Montréal crit that Skylar finished in third place, there were some much younger kids who were there, younger than me, who were looking at my bike and they were saying, bro, that's a sick bike. So Specialized hard rock from the 1990s or a rock hopper, that's the way to go.
But that's the next move though for big mountain bike, is to release bikes like this with that retro paint job and still, charge $4,000 or whatever this bike costs.
When are they going to just put the flat bar and the rapid fire shifters on?
2 years from now.
This is the equivalent of fashion right now. If you look at 23-year-olds right now, how are they dressing? A lot of them are dressing like Jerry Seinfeld from 1993, right? So it's kind of the same thing, but in bike design.
As one commentator put it on the Bike Rumor post, Jesus fucking Christ.
Okay, so for our next segment, I believe that's a segment we've done in the past. We haven't done it that often, but it was an idea that I had live on the podcast maybe 6 months ago. And the idea was to look at various brands of cycling kit. And the segment is called Tell Us What Kit You Wear, and we will tell you who you are. I think at the time, is it the Assos rider that we had done at that time? I can't remember what it was.
The Le Col rider.
Oh, that's right. It was the Le Col rider. So we had concluded that the Le Col rider was a very strong rider, had very big engine, big cardiovascular capacity, probably came from running, had bought a Peloton during the pandemic, got into outdoor cycling, and went nuts buying a lot of Le Col gear. That was our conclusion. Today, we're going to pivot to another brand, and we will talk about a brand that's quite popular out there in the world of cycling fashion, and that brand is Pas Normal Studios, PNS, or PAS, as I believe they are now called to avoid confusion. So, guys, let's do a bit of a deep dive here. So, sociologically and demographically speaking, who is the PNS rider?
I just want to say, and I think people will comment on this, and we recognize that we really set up a softball for ourselves here, right? Like this is a really easy one. We're not gonna have to dig too deep to get what this rider is at. Like first off, their bike, it's a standard, simple, easy. Home design, they're thinking they want sort of mid-century modern, open spaces, very Scandinavian. They have an incredibly expensive espresso maker. They dress in Gorp core, but very sort of expensive stuff. They have a pair of Solomons and Birkenstock Bostons. For work, they're obviously probably some type of design could be, but it's probably very varied. So photography, graphic design, somewhere along those lines.
Architect?
Could be an architect. Yeah, this one I think is pretty damn easy, but why don't, let's get the ball rolling with an easy one.
Yeah, I think you're pretty dead on. Did you say craft beer, that they like craft beer?
I don't think they do like craft beer, though.
No, I think they like natural wine. So wine that's been unfiltered, doesn't add sulfites in general. Bottle can go bad pretty easily because there are no conservation agents. All kind of taste the same. A little bit of yeasty taste, but they like that because they probably went on a trip to Copenhagen at some point, ate at a restaurant with tweezers, eating a shrimp on their plate, were served a natural wine and really enjoyed it and kind of came back and started drinking that. So I don't think they're craft beer people. To me, the craft beer people are more your Warren kind of cyclocross crowd there. Tony, you said it was a softball question and you went for the obvious things, right? The Danish mid-century furniture. They're an architect. They have an expensive espresso. Like you went for that whole thing. And I think that was the obvious, but I'm gonna think outside of consensus here a little bit and think, well, maybe it's something other than that. And to me, what characterizes the PNS person? So they're a person with good taste, obviously. I think they generally have a sense of aesthetics that is reasonably developed. But the thing about the PNS person is I think they search for validation through brands. They like to show other people that they're wearing brands, but only a certain kind of brand. They obviously wouldn't want to blingy things, but PNS fits in that category of being a highly visible brand, but also I guess perceived as a classy or a connoisseur or a pretty unique brand. So these people, they like brands like Arc'teryx,
Norse Project.
because you Norse Project. So you said they like Gorpcore, right? So Arc'teryx, I think, is a big brand for these people. But the PNS rider, to me, also has a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They're someone who needs to show other people that they have achieved things, or they're a little bit insecure about their personal identity. And that's what I meant earlier when I said they search for validation through brands. So it might be someone who so I think they're educated people. I think they all have university education, but I think it might be someone who didn't quite go to an Ivy League school, but they went to Cornell. So just below Ivy League, very, very good school, but doesn't quite qualify as an Ivy League school. It's always things like that in their lives that have happened where they were very good, but they were never quite the top person. So they have a bit of a chip on their shoulder and they need to prove to people that they're quite successful. And in fact, they are successful, generally speaking, because to afford this, you have to be pretty successful.
See, that last bit, I think I would agree with you maybe 2-3 years ago. Now, are we starting to veer into the panormal where being a little more kind of following the trends a bit? I don't know. And maybe that fits with having a chip on your shoulder and trying to like validate your coolness to the bullies in high school or something by having this niche thing. I don't know. That's what I'm kind of just, I don't necessarily disagree. I'm sort of just posing the question: is it still true today?
I think I agree with Warren there. It's changed a little bit because I think that the original sort of Panormal rider was still a bit more niche in cycling and sort of showed this aesthetic. And now it's very, I mean, we've talked about it, it's very cultish, but then things that sort of start as cult become sort of trends. And now I think it's people trying to be part of something while still trying to feel unique, right? I mean, it's the sort of, the hipster was criticized much through the 2010s as someone who, would say, the sort of classic joke, it's, you've never heard of the band or whatever, try and sort of espouse this very unique personality, but then you look at it and they're doing, very similar stuff to a great number of people. And I think that now that's kind of the PNS rider, someone who still wants to feel like they're alternative in the cycling world, but it's become such a big brand in there, and the style has become so permeated into the culture that you're not really as unique as you think you are.
But Tony, question for you: with this framework that we have here, where a PNS rider would have been very original, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, no longer is the case now. Are we condemned to always seeking new things in this case? Because if eventually everything becomes part of the establishment, right? PNS is now part of the establishment. So with what you're saying, that person would have been original a little while ago and they're not original anymore. Isn't this a bit of an issue in that we're cultivating this need for always new things?
I think that's been clear with a lot of stuff that's supposed to be niche and then becomes popular, and that sort of changes the attitude, especially those people who feel they maybe started it or were early adopters and they don't want to be part of the masses. So I think that kind of pushes for it. And there's a lot of, we've criticized for sort of different jokes about Pat Mal, and we definitely get a lot of messages. They're a brand with a lot of detractors.
But they're a good brand. I mean, they're a good quality brand, design conscious.
Yes.
They are to be commended for their contribution to
But,
cycling.
and I would say that 3 or 4 years ago there weren't really any detractors. Now we didn't have this podcast, but I'm still a man about town and stuff, because it seemed kind of less, when it was less ubiquitous, it sort of seemed kind of cooler. And now the criticism is not really of the brand, it's of the rider, and what they're meaning is the new rider who's come in, spent a lot of money on this very expensive thing, isn't maybe as committed to cycling, or people feel they aren't as committed to cycling, that they're sort of fashion people, they're not doing it for the right reasons. Again, this is just sort of a generalization. It's not everyone who wears Pat or Mal, but I think that's a little bit where it's at.
Alex, to your point about cultivating the new, that's kind of what cycling is it not? Just like getting excited about and buying the new things. And I mean, that's more of a general comment about cycling and less about trying to be a bit of an outsider, knowing these niche brands. I was also just thinking that, just going back to us talking about the Marin Gestalt X whatever, I feel like we're on the verge of a sea change in kit design where it's going to get wilder again. Like, you even look at the design Panorama did for the cross team they're sponsoring, the US cross team, the Steve Tilford Foundation kit that they've done is, the jersey itself is fairly, I don't want to say wild, but it's not block colors, right? Maybe Panorama or somebody kind of just waiting for some brand to come out with like a return to wilder, I don't know if they're fluorescent or something designs, but getting away from the block colors. And then 5 years from now we're going to get sold block colors again and be told it's great and the new shit to buy.
This happens a lot, especially in fashion all over, is that once something becomes too popular, tastemakers, whether real or perceived by themselves, they want to move on. Like, I guarantee we're going to see shorter sleeves in cycling jerseys in the next 4 to 5 years, right? Which is the whole thing. And then you have these long sleeves, they got to be super tight. And then every single person's going to buy it. This sort of less, I don't want to call them less prestigious, but maybe the brand's kind of not as popular, or maybe sort of lower price point. They'll find a way to sort of inexpensively copy that. The style is popular from, the Map and Panorama and those kind of brands. And then the brands will, not want to be doing what those brands will be doing. So they'll sort of go back to club fit jerseys, or it's circular, but in this kind of way where we're always kind of trying to prove that everyone's trying to sort of prove that they're more unique or more interesting than they probably really are.
I guess that's where I was going by saying that nowadays the person wearing Panorama is a little more like chasing the trends. Like, and I'm not saying a person wearing Panorama is going to buy the Marin Gestalt, but you know what I mean? Like, just like, it just feels a bit more like cyclical trend chasing movement we're going to be going to. So yeah, that I'm just thinking really deeply about the Panorama person. I think they're just a bit behind, they're just like discovering broken social scene now or something, as a band. I couldn't think of a good reference.
Long. Yeah.
Anyway, to me, the Panorama rider is a design conscious person who has an eye for things that are beautiful. It's not someone who would just wear any cycling kit, but that person also has a bit of an inferiority complex, bit of a chip on their shoulder. Nothing wrong with having a chip on your shoulder, though. Lance Armstrong, major chip on his shoulder, won 7 Tour de France. So it can lead to inspiration and good things. So that's the Panorama rider. Let us know what you think. Send us a DM at cyclingfashionweek. sure there's a lot of Panorama riders out there who can maybe contradict what we said or add to our take.
A lot of detractors who will maybe agree or even say try and say some pretty negative things. But
yeah, and to be clear, we are not only detractors of Panorama. I speaking for myself here, I think they've had a great contribution to cycling kit design. The other thing I like about Panorama, very proud of their Scandinavian heritage with the midsummer stuff. Kind of exporting Denmark to the rest of the world, to the extent that I'm sure there's Panorama riders out there who greet themselves by saying "hey, hey," and who are very keen to act Danish. So I think I think they've had a great contribution to cycling, and I'm keen to see what comes out of Panorama in the next few years.
The detractors are Brant Sorensen riders.
We'll do the Brant Sorensen riders, all 5 of them, on another episode. Okay, our next segment, our flagship segment, Into the Canal, where we throw something from the world of cycling style and cycling fashion, cycling culture into Montreal's Lachine Canal. If we don't like that aspect of cycling style, culture, or fashion, the opposite of a canal is a camélien. That's when we want to congratulate something or say that we appreciate something from the world of cycling culture. I was not around last episode, so I'm going to start because I've had a lot of time to think about this one. I have a canal this week. It's not a camélien, so I'm going to be on the negative side. And it actually reflects the reason why I've been riding my bike more recently, because I've been so busy at work. I've been working some weekends as well, and I haven't really had time to do a whole lot of road riding or gravel riding. So the main reason why I've been getting on my bike recently has been for commuting. And so this is regarding commuter culture. And I don't know, guys, you'll tell me if this is a Montreal only thing or if you see that in Toronto as well. But my canal this week is people who put a milk crate on their computer as a basket in the back of their bike.
Commuter?
Yeah, on their commuter. So they, on top of their back wheel, they'll put a milk crate, and that's their basket for which they are going to carry stuff. I just find that offensive personally. And it's very, very common. You see it a lot. Like, you walk around Montreal, you look at bikes that are locked on various, on various fences or bike stands. And yeah, there's a lot of these milk crates, like these Quai or Seal Test milk crates that people carry their bags in. I mean, very functional, no question about it. And I bet that they're probably not hard to find. They're probably easy. And then you just put it on your bike as a basket. But my God, is it ugly? Like, usually it doesn't match the color of the bike. First of all, it's plastic. Like, do you really want to have a plastic basket on your commuter bike? Warren is in the process of buying an expensive, beautiful Dutch looking commuter. Would you consider putting a plastic milk crate on that? Absolutely not. It would ruin the look of your bike. Get yourself a nice metal basket. And I'm partial to the front basket personally, as opposed to the back basket. I just think it looks better overall. It's more classic. That's what I have on my Specialized Hard Rock, and I like that you can see your stuff in the front too. So if you hit a bump or something falls, at least you would know. Avoid the milk crates as a basket on your commuter bike. I think it looks bad.
So this is a very Montreal thing. I mean, it exists elsewhere, but the sort of domination of it. And for those who don't know too much about Montreal, Montreal is home to 4 major universities. And so it has a large population, not native Montrealers, but people living there between the ages of say 17 and 25. So it has a lot of sort of these kids doing jerry-rigged half-ass things, whether because they don't have any style or they don't have any money or whatever it is. Although I guess going to university, you got to have, just use your giant loans to buy a basket. But so yes, I would say it's a very, I agree with you, but it's a very Montreal thing. And definitely it's going to be a lot of students doing this, getting a sort of cheap commuter. And I actually think what's kind of weird about it is when I was in university in Montreal, this was very popular, and I think sort of intentional too. Not even just, it's all I could find. It was sort of a style. So I'm wondering why many years later, it's still a style. Like shouldn't people be sort of evolving from that trend, or is it just too practical? But it's very ugly, and honestly, baskets are sort of one of the few cycling accessories that aren't that expensive.
I was going to say a walled basket's like $30-$40. Like I guess a milk crate you can just steal from out back a convenience store or something. But like, yeah, they're not very expensive. Oh, sorry. Right. I forgot. Désolé, Alex. It's just so easy. And I agree with you. I'm also a front basket guy. I think the milk crate at the back just looks like you're not trying. I've definitely seen it in Toronto, but yeah, it's for sure more prominent in Montreal. So I'm curious if whether it be in the US.
Do we have any Portland listeners? Because I feel like it would be big in Portland.
We'll get Dustin Klein back on the show to see if it's a Portland thing too. He probably rides with a milk crate.
I'm sure he's a milk crate guy.
He's a front basket guy. I've seen his commuter. He's had it in his videos.
Yeah, but he would say, bro, you do you. You want to put a milk crate on? Put a milk crate on. There are no rules. That's what Dustin would say. All right, Tony, what do you got in the canal this week?
So I've got one from a listener. I apologize. I can't find the DM with your name, but we have some very astute listeners who sometimes notice things. Either we haven't seen it in our locality, or we just haven't sort of noticed it. So sometimes I like to take a listener's canal and just use it as my own.
And our listeners are kind of our own intelligence network as well, who give us the lowdown on what happens in every market out there. That's part of the reason why we're so well informed, is because we have great listeners.
And so this one I don't think I've actually seen before. And he said, into the canal are wearing over socks with shorts. And I know that there's like the aero over socks that the pros should be wearing, because again, we're talking about saving watts and stuff. You're at 50K, you're doing time trial, you're saving 3 watts. It's big. You're not saving enough watts on your 28 kilometer average group ride with 25 people. Like, you don't have to do it. So either they're doing it for that reason, which is still stupid, or their feet are so cold but their legs are warm enough. And that's really weird too. Like, maybe there's some sort of circulation issue. I don't know if he's seen multiple people, or it was one person that they were sort of shocked with. Like, I don't want to say it's bad. I just don't get it. Like, I just can't imagine being like, man, my feet are freezing, but my legs are really warm. Like, really, over socks to me kind of don't come out until, at least leg warmers, but usually tights.
Listen, I get cold toes. I have whole circulation issues, but never to the point where I would even consider wearing over socks and not at least knee warmers. It would still look stupid, but like, I don't know, maybe that person thinks they're being aero and they don't realize they bought like the winter over socks and not like the Velotoes speed.
But do you need to be aero? Like, what are you, assuming this person's out on a group ride or even a solo ride, like what aero gains do they think they're getting?
Got to win their group ride. Come on.
That's true.
Okay, Warren, what do you got?
So speaking of listeners, I don't want to say our listeners, because when we talk about our listeners and, helping us by sending ideas and like great comments and that sort of thing, I'm more talking about people who listen to the podcast and maybe they're a detractor, maybe they're just a casual listener, or they hate listening, which, listen, that's fine. Pumps up our stats. That's fine too. I am going to throw, I don't actually know this person's name because I've forgotten it, but I'm going to throw a specific listener into the canal because, as I mentioned last episode, I bought a new carbon cross bike. Naturally, I was looking to sell my old one, which was, as I've talked about before, it's a steel Ritchie Swiss Cross frame. And so I listed my Ritchie for sale on a couple local buy and sell for sale groups on Facebook. I listed on Pink Bike. Now, as our listeners know, we have previously thrown into the canal the general used bike market that's going on right now, and price inflation and people listing like 2-year-old bikes for like above retail. So when I posted my Ritchie, I listed it for, I think initially $1,400 Canadian for the frame set. Now that was a price suggested to me by my mechanic, who is really good and I trust a lot. I should also note that the frame set new in Canada retails for $2,200 to $2,300 locally. Maybe it varies elsewhere, but in Toronto, that is the retail price. But somebody commented on my post, so you are selling a beat up used frame for close to retail while roasting people on your podcast about doing the same. And then this person posts a link to Bike In to the Ritchie Swiss Cross frame, which in a size large, which is what I was selling, would have sold for, on Bike In, it's listed at 1650 Canadian. So I'm going to throw in this person in the canal for a couple of reasons. First of all, don't try to roast us because we'll roast you back and you'll delete your comment, which is what happened. And second of all, don't try to use Bike In as like a real retail price barometer for a lot of reasons. So for any of our listeners who haven't shopped on Bike In, it is a website that sells the products are legitimate. I don't know if the means of acquiring the products to sell on the website are legitimate. I have no idea how they sell these products at outrageously low prices. And it's just not a realistic take, especially once you factor in shipping and duties to Canada. And I quickly added the Swiss Cross to my cart, and it immediately added over $300 shipping, putting the price of the bike he linked to $2,000, hence making mine not near retail. Another reason he's in the canal is the $600 price difference is not near retail. When we've roasted people, it's for listing it literally at retail price.
Or being like 15 years old and listing it 200, a couple $100 off.
Or that too. And also, so that's 2,000 without even getting the duties. So I would argue the duties is probably going to put you at or above the retail price. But that said, I did not check Bike In before I listed my frame. So I did immediately lower the price to $1,200 because if somebody wants to take that gamble, fair enough. And yeah, my Ritchie he says beat up. One, I didn't take the best photos. Two, there were a fair number of scratches on it. It's a cross gravel bike. Like, I kind of expect that from a used gravel bike myself. If it was a road bike, it'd be a bit different. This guy is in the canal for doing that. And I replied back saying I hadn't seen the Bike In link, but I told him, like, it's $300 shipping. That doesn't include duties. I've dropped the price to $1,200. So I just said, like, these are the facts. I still think this is a reasonable price. And that guy deleted his comment. So he's in the canal this week. He's also in the canal because literally that same day, I got a message from a very interested buyer and sold him the bike the next day.
First off, like the Bike In thing itself should just be like, is the main thing for the canal, because however they do it, like they sell cask helmets, unless they are like the best knockoffs there is, but like they sell cask helmets basically at half price what you'd buy at any other online retailer, but especially anything you'd buy in store in Canada at least. And so I don't think that that's a fair comparison. He should be looking at what's retail in Canada because that's what you paid. That's what you're sort of comparing yourself to. You also didn't put price firm, fuck you, like some of these people do, right? You knew it could be a negotiation.
I said price negotiable, like right in the ad.
Yeah. That's another canal for me when people were like price firm, can't change. And you're like, okay, fine. So I don't know. I think you're right. This guy's, everyone wants to come at the Kings. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. So
he fucked around and found out.
He wanted to find some way to get at us, but he was wrong because we have morals and we stick to them.
I also want to add, I don't care. I ended up selling it for $1,000 because the guy who was interested was very interested, made a reasonable offer. And I was like, yeah, like I can acknowledge this bike has been well used. He came, checks out the frame, is still in really good condition. He got it for less than half retail.
So Warren, as you were speaking, I was looking on Reddit at people's experiences with Bike In, and let me tell you, a quick search on Reddit does not yield great results.
I've heard some bad.
People don't seem to be very keen on Bike In.
Also, I just want to add to those out there who are buying off of Facebook Marketplace, Kijiji, online, whatever. Again, unless they're a jerk who says price firm, most people do not put the price that they sort of expect to get. So always make a lower offer. Not, don't say someone's selling a frame for $1,200, I'll give you $100, but I don't think I've ever bought anything off any of those online sites without offering less first.
On the Bike In, sorry guys, I'm still on Bike In. On the Bike In websites, they say that we are part of the trade-in group with over 1 million legitimate products. So they go out of their way to say that the products are legitimate, which
I mean, at the prices, like I was definitely skeptical the first time I heard of this website.
Me
And then
too.
I think the first time I bought something, it was bottle cages. And then they came and they were legit. And slowly I've been buying, like I bought my cask helmet there for, as Tony said, literally half price.
Maybe they are fake. Maybe it's just really good knockoffs. 'Cause I bought my cask helmet there too. God, I hope I don't crash. Like, what if it does not work? Someone's gonna set something in and be like, no. It's just like the best like foreign knockoffs there are.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's probably
real.
like a branch of Wiggle or something. You know, Wiggle probably owns it. My Garmin 530 came from there, and it's in English. No typos or anything like that. So it's, you know, it hasn't crashed yet. So I think it's legit. But yeah, maybe tomorrow it'll like boot up and say Wahoo on it or something. Who knows?
Okay, that's it for another episode of Cycling Fashion Week. Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Tony. We will see you in a couple of weeks. And as always, Cycling Fashion Week was brought to you by Le Club, leclub.cc. This fall, Le Club brings you its largest ever cold weather collection. Yes, cold weather is coming here in the Northern Hemisphere. And if that is where you are located, you should go to leclub.cc and check out their winter apparel and accessories to delight and deliver from brands like MAP, Universal Colors, and Fingers Crossed. If you're not into the cold weather so much and you want to shop super light indoor training essentials for your time spent on Zwift, Wahoo System, or whatever floats your boat, they've got that too. You get 15% off unique bundles. You get free shipping on orders over $100. Or you can use the code FashionWeek15. Tell them that Alex, Tony, and Warren sent you. And that's another way that you can get 15% over at leclub.cc. Make sure to check out their coffee, but please don't drink slow drip coffee because that is part of cross culture. Thank you very much, and we will see you in a couple weeks.